Next up, it's Off-World Interceptor Extreme, the second PlayStation game from Crystal Dynamics. Their first was Total Eclipse Turbo, which we covered back in episode 4. If you missed that one, let me catch you up real quick. Crystal Dynamics started out as a developer for the 3DO Interactive Multiplayer, a 32-bit console that first hit stores in 1993. The studio's first project was the 3DO launch title Crash and Burn, a futuristic racer filled with a ton of cheesy full-motion video.
My favorite weapon is the missile. It's the long-distance stab in the back.
We'll see more of this stuff in a bit. Crystal Dynamics later followed up with 3DO versions of Total Eclipse and Off-World Interceptor in 1994, before porting both to the PlayStation the next year. Like Total Eclipse, Off-World Interceptor Extreme is a forward-scrolling rail shooter, only this one's terrain-based. You drive an armored monster truck across a couple dozen levels of alien wasteland, dodging obstacles while gunning down enemies. The story is that you're a trash man, or a bounty hunter with bloodlust on the brain and dollar signs in your eyes. Or, in other words, you're a crime cracker who dropped out of Bounty Hunter Community College. The money you earn from bringing in bounties can be used to upgrade your truck between levels, and later on you'll buy new vehicles that have higher base stats. Each truck has its own primary weapon with unlimited ammo, along with 3 additional sub-weapons. You also have a limited supply of nitro boosts, and you can jump and hover using a shoulder button. The game's actually kind of overwhelming at first, since there's a different function or sub-weapon mapped to almost every button on the PlayStation controller. The weapons are all pretty useful once you get the hang of things, though. The plasma mines can take out enemies who are tailing you, and you can call in an airstrike if you get surrounded. You can also lean your truck back to fire in the air, which gives you a wider range of attack than you might expect. Between its variety of weapons and the upgrade system, gameplay in Off-World Interceptor is overall more interesting and better balanced than Total Eclipse, which became stale pretty quickly in comparison. Another thing that makes Off-World Interceptor unique is its use of live-action video, which, believe it or not, has overdubbed commentary in the style of Mystery Science Theater 3000.
More cash cops happen to get terminated in the process.
What?
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 Finish your sentence, you wiener!
This isn't an optional feature or an Easter egg or anything. These guys riff on every cutscene in the game, from start to finish. Now, the story going around about this game's development is that Crystal Dynamics filmed all this full-motion video for Off-World Interceptor, but somehow it was only after a second viewing that they realized how cheesy it was. Supposedly, that's when the team decided to give it the MST3K treatment, sort of as an apology to anyone watching.
Fancy?
But I'm pretty sure it's all a work. I mean, this character's name is literally Colonel Fancy, and some of the dialogue is just a little bit too on the nose. So yeah, this whole thing was probably filmed for the express purpose of being made fun of later. It's even a bullet point on the back of the game's box. That said, the video makes for a pretty good incentive to play through the game, if just to see what those 2 jerk-offs will say next.
I give Off-World Interceptor a thumbs up.
Me too!
Don't.
By the way, if their voices sound familiar, you may know these guys better as the stand-up comedians Brian Posehn and Doug Benson. Both of them are obviously more popular nowadays than they were in 1994. So, let's talk about this game's development history for a minute. Off-World Interceptor is the brainchild of Crystal Dynamics programmer Greg Marquez. Marquez had previously worked as a tools designer during the production of Total Eclipse for the 3DO, and company higher-ups were so impressed with his tech that they asked him to design a prototype for a quote-unquote grounded version of Total Eclipse, where players drive a vehicle on top of rocky terrain. Marquez did so, and production soon started on a game called Orion Off-Road, which later became Off-World Interceptor. Now, if you saw our previous episode about Total Eclipse Turbo, you'll know that I'm not a fan. It looks promising, but the unpredictable collision detection and punishing energy mechanic made it a chore to play. Honestly, I wasn't looking forward to covering another game that used the same engine. But I gotta say, the switch from aerial to ground-based gameplay did this engine a world of good. My biggest complaint with Total Eclipse Turbo, the crappy hit detection, is much less of a problem in Off-World Interceptor. In Total Eclipse Turbo, colliding with any wall could send you into a death spiral that was very difficult to recover from. Here you actually want to hit the bumps and hills along the road, because it makes it more difficult for enemies to target you, and as a bonus, collisions don't damage your vehicle. The slippery controls that drag down Total Eclipse Turbo also make a lot more sense when you apply them to a big-ass monster truck in space. You naturally expect this thing to bounce around a lot while you play. Looking back, moving to land-based gameplay was a smart design decision that effectively salvaged the work done on Total Eclipse, in essence turning its weaknesses into strengths. Off-World Interceptor was further upgraded during its trip from the 3DO to the PlayStation. The original 3DO version actually had a fuel meter that you had to constantly replenish over the course of each level by collecting these red gas can icons. It's similar to how your energy constantly drained in Total Eclipse, but it works a little bit differently here. If you miss enough of those fuel icons in any level, you'll run out of gas. Now you'd think that this would mean instant death, but instead you just kinda sit there while you wait for this drone to fly in and refill your tank. This is a really weird addition to the game. Sometimes enemies take the opportunity to ambush you while you're stuck in place, but that doesn't always happen. Often you're just stuck staring at a wall while you're waiting for the game to continue. It just feels like the game grinds to a halt every so often, for no good reason. Apparently, Crystal Dynamics came to the same conclusion, because the fuel meter was dropped from the PlayStation version entirely. You never run out of gas here, so each level is a straight shot to the finish. Off-World's levels changed quite a bit during the porting process as well. They're overall much longer on the PlayStation, and their designs are more complex and fleshed out. The enemies are also less aggressive, and there are a lot more item pickups, making it easier to survive. Oh, and the PlayStation port automatically puts your car back on its wheels if you flip upside down. In the 3DO version, that didn't happen. Really? Seriously? Oh, come on! On the other hand, the PlayStation version censors some of the cutscene audio, so if you want to play the unrated and out-of-control director's cut version of Off-World Interceptor, you'll need to play it on 3DO.
You never finished the sentence, you You never finished the sentence, you bastard!
No.
Ingadoko, what about the Ingadoko, what about the Hummer? I was just looking at your pooper.
Oh my... what? Pooper? One other weird thing is that the Japanese version of Off-World Interceptor Extreme ditches the MST3K setup. Instead, it just dubs over the original video. This is actually the only way you can see the original footage filmed for this game without those silhouettes pasted on top of it. Well, anyway, while Total Eclipse didn't make a great first impression for Crystal Dynamics, Off-World Interceptor Extreme was a different story. Total Eclipse demonstrated that Crystal Dynamics was technically capable, but Off-World Interceptor Extreme showed that the studio was adaptable, and was skilled at iterating on its own ideas in productive ways. The people who made this game really put everything they had into it, including their own likenesses. But they wouldn't be riding high for long. Crystal Dynamics' next game was an unexpected challenge. Oddly enough, it also marked a step back in terms of technology, dragging the studio away from 3D shooters and back into the realm of 2D mascot platformers. This particular game's lead programmer later described the experience as a project from hell, so you know there's a good story there. Sometimes, game development gives you a rewarding project that lets you explore new creative realms, and other times...
it's tail time!
And with that, we've finished our look at the PlayStation's release lineup for September of 1995. Alright! Coming up next in October is Mortal Kombat 3, a port of Midway's arcade fighting game. I don't know, I'm more of a Street Fighter the movie kind of guy. We'll see how it stacks up and... No, Smoke, no!
Smoke wins.
Oh man, that's a bummer. We needed that Earth. Well, see you next time.